for this panel. So without further ado, I'll introduce our second panelist, Mr. Jeremy Goro, the coordinator of the NRI Election Research and Observation Project from the National Research Institute.
Thank you, Arian. Good afternoon, the audience. I'd like to make mention of our eminency Cardinal John Ribat and some of our stakeholders from the respective high commissions and the rep from EU, and Mr. Yombori and team TIPNG, team IPPC and ANU. In election research, we are together, and I'd like to take this time to acknowledge all of your presence here, including our electoral commissioner who came and went away, and I'm sure that some of the officers here, and the officers from PMNEC, who are part of the IDA committee, which is very important for our election process going forward. I'm happy to take this time, not going to present more details like the others do. We'll quickly run through the key findings of the election observation that NRI did. And NRI has been doing election observations since 1964. We've got a lot of reports dusted, in some in the carpets, because no recommendations has been taken up. So I think this year's election, unlike the previous elections, under the leadership of Prime Minister James Marape and the chairmanship of Governor Alan Bett, we are tasked again to review all the reports, do a desktop review of all the election reports, analyze and identify the key prevailing problems, and do a recommendation which will be tabled in the Parliament. So that is that looks brighter for the part of PNC NRI and ANU and TIPNC, who have been doing reports after reports after reports in the elections. And I'd like to take this time to also acknowledge the Parliamentary Special Committee on Elections Review for 2022 and going forward. Okay, so I'm going to present the key findings. I'm not a political scientist. I am a education research fellow in the program, but because there's no staff in the governance and politics, I'm now taken as one of the staff in the governance and politics, and I'm playing the key role in the observation, and we are up to date with the findings, and our reports will be out soon, like the IPNC. Maybe early next year we will launch our reports. But this afternoon I'll briefly take you to the key findings. The background, or my presentation will be the background and context, the observation on the campaign, observation in the polling, and observations in the counting. Because I sent the team out 2 weeks prior to polling, they were able to get the information around what happens during campaign, which led to the polling and the results. So that's why we were able to gather some of the information in the campaign, during campaign, as well as the polling, and my team were able to stay there until the completion of all the countings and the return of votes. We did put up with all the changes in the dates and time and schedule, but finally we were able to come back with the observation. Although my presentation here will be basically qualitative, because our approach was different from what used to be done before collecting data. So what we decided was the time was not enough on our side. We also lack the capacity and the manpower to do all the data collection like TIPNC and ANU. So we were able to send people to identify places that we think are important for our observation. We send people, local people there to do a social anthropological observation. So basically, my presentation here will be just telling you those stories and observations they have seen. I'm not able to present the pictures because my observers were wearing uniforms and they were targets of the candidates and supporters. So they have to save their mobile phone and their lives. The observation was made possible through the Council meeting and resolution, NRA Council, and was funded by the DFET, the people of Australia. So NRI observation was done with the support of the DFET, with a team of 12 people, 12 officers, 2 officers from NRI, including myself, and we recruited 9 other people from the provinces that we were able to observe. How do we recruit them? We identify university graduates and people who were working in the local area for some time, and we send them through the local area, so that gives them the guarantee to be free around, because NRA was not able to meet all the cost, so we send them to the village, and they said, you can stay there as the local people and observe what you can observe and report to us. But we gave them specific instructions on what to observe and write. So they were doing a 40-day observation, including all the journals, like the ANU did. So we compile all the journals, and we come up with we identify all the key themes and report according to what commonly observed in the provinces. Sorry, I have to go back. We've done our research in the 6 of the 7 Highlands provinces, because all our reports from 1964 stated that since 2002, elections in the Highlands have been going from good to bad to that trend was not going well. So we said, okay, we should send people to observe what happened in the Highlands, so we want to see if the issues are improved or otherwise. So that's the reason why we choose Highlands. We send people to stay in the Eastern Highlands, covering Daulo electorate. In Simbu, South Numana Karamoi, which is one of the out-of-flanced area in this province, but we were able to identify people there to observe for us. For Chiwaka, we sent people to identify 2 officers to go to North Waki. In Western Highlands, we are placing 2 officers at 2 local people at Tambul Neblia, Yalibu Pangia, and Wapanamanda. We didn't have anyone in the Hela because of cost, one, and also for safety of our officers and observers. There was so many observations going on in the campaign, but we got information from the observers that the candidates represent people of all sectors, people who well-to-do in business, well-to-do in education, people who are local-based, people who are from Mosby and Rabaul and Lake going up for election time. So people from all sectors of life, they contested in the election. Most candidates were not endorsed by political parties, as presented by our electoral commissioner, that only 60 or 35% were endorsed. So it's the same in the Highlands. Most candidates were self-endorsed or independent. The shifting of dates for nomination also affect our schedule of observation, so we had people stay longer to observe. There were major political rallies happening in the central towns like the Goroka, Kuniyawa, Hagen. So it was common, people were, the major political parties were hosting rallies like Pangu, PNC, URP, NA, PPP, not PPP, PNC party. So these political parties were able to host rallies which attract more crowds, and there were a lot of things going on. Our observers also reported there were party alliances also observed in the election, visible, and candidates also do form alliance. So one candidate going to another candidate to exchange for second and third preference. So this was very visible in the during the campaign. We also have tribal and language groups, alliance, affiliations, so people from the same language group, they may have 2 or 3 candidates, but they form alliance to agree on whom to vote. Use of merchandise was very popular in the election, in the campaign, especially the billboards, banners, posters, cards, caps, T-shirts, and all of those. Political rallies by candidates also attracted most good crowds, and that's where they were able to disseminate the policies, and they put up a big political rallies. One of the common features in the elections in the Highlands was the campaign houses. Used to be a men's house before for important decision making, but around election time they used this as campaign houses, and people go there for as a meeting point where the candidates meet the supporters, and they had several discussions about whom and how to vote. One of the other development happened this election is the use of social media and digital platform. It's very popular among the candidates. Candidates were seen using so WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups to disseminate the information, and the coordinators were able to share with others and all of this. So the use of digital platforms around this time was popular. In the Highlands, campaign period was seen as a feasting period. Lots of food and money exchanged. The candidates got from village to village, and the supporters cooked food. In return, they were giving money and all of this. So it's going on. So a trade of money to food and food to money, etc. Invitations were popular also in the Highlands, according to the observers. Candidates invited supporters to their houses, and supporters also invited candidates to their village to campaign on the policies and to gain support. One of the key players during the campaign was the use of money power play. So in the Highlands, people with more money do more talking than people with no money. So if candidates who without money, even with a very colorful background and policies, they were very little or less talking, because I think money do a lot of more talking. And I think money moves mountains in the Highlands. Political parties branding is one of the other popular things now in the 2022 elections. More political party is using a color code, so green for Pangu and red for PNC, and other political parties come up with other colors too. Orange for ULP, so blue for other parties, and so political party branding was very popular in this election. There were also observations of pre-polling intimidation and threats common in the Highlands. Among the observers, they said people were the use of high-power guns, carrying them around with the candidates in the vehicles, and candidates' supporters are very common. So it was also observed. A particular report from a group in Simbu that said the culture of Nera Tere, also known as give and take, was very common. I think it's widespread in the entire province, and I think other parts of the province. One of the other things they've observed was the use of vehicle. So the perception in the Highlands that if you use more vehicles, you have more supporters and you are a big man. So the visible use of more vehicles, convoy of vehicles, was popular in this election. Family ties visitations were also important, and candidates used key clan coordinators. Clan coordinators were used as a middleman for them to go and entice people to vote him, and if they have to use any resource, they go through the clan middlemen, the coordinators. Okay, so gone wrong somewhere. Should be polling observations up there somewhere. This is from polling observation according to what I've heard. Shifting of dates created confusions. Some observers, in the Highlands, most villages are not connected. So most villages are still in the bushes. So when the dates of polling changed, these people were not able to get information on time. And when the ballot papers arrived, they were surprised. So this also created confusions among the voters. There were also issues of names of polling places, common role issues, and name, basically coming back to names of polling places. So the polling places in the Highlands when they went, the names were not matched to the local community, so they have to cross-check with the ballot papers or with the names on the list to make sure that they come to the right place. The voting materials were not used. Most ballot papers were the compromise. In some places they get less ballot papers, and other places they get more ballot papers. And use of indelible ink, there were never any sign of using those ink. So people were just clean, go vote, come back, go vote, come back. So some of the observations. I think, as alluded to by Prof. Haley, I think because of those other issues, I think the people decided to resort to the simple way to vote, and that is to use of double voting. Voters were allowed to vote many times to exhaust the papers, and sometimes they also use underage voting, as long as they're in the community at a time. They ask them to go and stand in the queue to vote. Block voting, especially when there is a tension, they resort to block voting. Block voting in the sense that they may have one candidate in this area who wanted to get all the vote, and the candidates get all the vote. If we get the master records from the electoral commission, we will confirm this observation on block voting, distributive voting, and control voting. You will see that several candidates will not get votes, only few candidates will get more votes. And that is the evidence that such practice happen. I'm waiting for the forms from the electoral commission. They have to, once the form is ready, we're going to use it to justify some of those claims or observations. For convenience, block voting is used, and also to settle tensions. And cooperative and distributive voting is also used. These are new terms we're using because in the past it never happened. So when they have 3 or 4 candidates who are all vying for a particular polling place, they resort to distribute the papers. The community agreed to say, okay, we give 300 to this man, 200 to this man, and 300 to this man, and 10, 20 to this man. So such practice happened, and I think when we get the result, the master record from electoral commission, for those electorate that we observe, I'm most willing to do another analysis to confirm those observations. Okay. So we come back to all those new terms you're using, block, control, and distributive voting. And also when this happens, you will see that the presentation by Prof. Haley, that the primary votes distribution, and even in the elimination, you will see that certain candidates get more vote, and certain candidates get no vote. So that will confirm that people resort to ease the tension, people resort to cooperate, to block, to distribute, and to control vote. So this is very bad for our democracy, because the pinnacle of principle of democracy is 1%, 1 vote. 1%, 1 vote. And if we continue to allow that to happen, I think the future of democracy for PNG is not good. As alluded by other TIPNG and ANU, threats and intimidation is prevalent in some of these polling places. These threats and intimidation were very prevalent because of absence of the security personnel. The security personnel around this time, they had only 1 policeman at 1 polling place, and we're talking about 500, 600 men to 1. So the issues of security uses, not enough manpower to protect the ballot papers, to protect the officials, importantly. It happened in Daulo, right on the highway, that the villagers chased the electoral polling officials away to get the votes. They took the ballot box away, they voted, and they took the ballot box to Goroka, and the box was sent away because of double infringement. It was taken out, voted, and taken to the counting center. It was thrown out. So the extra ballot papers were shared among the other candidates. Use of monetary incentive on the polling day, the polling station was very popular, was visible, place clear. So I was going to say, here, come. I am this candidate, go get 50 kina, 20 kina, vote for him. And, you know, sometimes the 50 kina buys more vote than one vote. So that was visible. Hijacking of ballot boxes, as in the Daulo, as said, and tapping of ballot boxes in Wapanamanda. A lot of things happen. Our full reports explain all of this. One of the positive observations was that some polling places, especially in Tambul Neblia, they were allowed to form lines, one line for female and one line for male, and they were allowed to go and vote. Whether they checked their names or not, but they said they allowed men and women to stand in the line, and they went and they were able to get a ballot paper to vote. Okay, so at the counting, it was okay. From the gate, all the security personnel were the counting. They were able to protect or secure the ballot boxes and all the proper counting officials from where my observers were. And they were able to protect ballot papers. But inside the counting, the issues of ballot papers arise again because some of the ballot boxes have more than one signature at the back. And some scrutineers were able to identify those, and they disputed that they had a lot of complaints about why should they have two signatures at the back, and they were given some explanations that the assistant presiding officer also had to sign because of the running of time. So they were able to count, but there were issues about ballot papers being signed by more than one people. The scrutineers also complain about why a particular polling place, all the ballot papers should be given to one candidate and others got zero. Things happen, and they found out at the counting that 100% one candidate, the box belongs to one candidate in the primary vote, and even on the second count and third count, the particular box were pre-designed for 3 candidates. So they were able to dispute that, but because they do not have evidence to support them, they said the counting proceed. As a result, we've seen a lot of 102 cases of election petitions, so many things happen. The evidence of unfair distribution of primary votes, block and swap voting were also evident in the counting, as observed and reported by the observers. The other good thing about the counting officials were, because Highlands region has more population, it's densely populated than the other regions, but the time given for the Highlands region was very less, okay? So we're given about 2-3 weeks to return all the seats. Because they were able to have good counting officials, they were able to speed up the process. And I think Highlands was given until 12th August to make the final declaration, and they were able to finish the counting on the second date, which is after the 29th, 5th, and 12th. So they were able to make all the returns by 12th August. The observers and media personnel were allowed into the counting venue, but they were not able, or they were not allowed to take pictures and record anything, because like what Governor Baird was alluded to, all the scrutineers, including the observing team, and were not allowed to take photos or anything. Okay, so we identify some key recommendations in line with what TIPNG and ANU has recommended. I think the issue about common role is here to stay until we get this fixed. The other integrity issues on the election will get them fixed. So Still a lot of things work to be done around common roll because we do not have the national census updated since the last time we had it in 2011. So we're supposed to have one in 2021. It didn't happen, and it's postponed to next 2024. So unless we get these national census right, we will not continue to rely on guesstimate figures. Guesstimating figures is dangerous because how do we sure that the growth rate or the new provisional voters rate will be 8.6? So these are mere guess based on some ghost figures. So we have to get first thing, national census right. And then based on the national census, we'll be able to do a demographic analysis and to see how many eligible voters are in that electorate so we can get this going on. So it's very important that we get common right. And I think my recommendations in line with what the Electoral Commission has already said. We have to get the vote system right, the vote record system right. Because at the moment now, you've seen what you are seeing on the common roll and what you are seeing in the national census are ghost figures. 90% of these are ghost. I can tell you that I have a living population of 500 or 700, and less than 500 are a voting population. And yet my vote get 1,180 ballot papers. So that's an example of how you can screw up with the guesstimate figures. My vote area is a living population of 700 people, and say, okay, if we get 30% out, okay, we will have a voting population about 400 plus. But we get 1,180, nearly 1,200. So that's a 300% inflated figures for ballot paper. So the same, I am sure it's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. So we have to get the national census right. We get the demographics right. And then go down to the vote and we fix up the vote record system and then do a bottom-up planning to identify eligible voters. And it's not going to be electoral commissioner's job. It's going to be everybody's job. It's going to be the church's job. It's going to be the councillor's job, the village court magistrate, whoever has interest in the democracy of Papua New Guinea will have to do this right. Otherwise, we are going to allow these people with vested interest, the so-called candidates, to inflate common roll every year, and the population will always go up. Our second key recommendation is proper planning and adhering to elections. I understand the situation the Electoral Commissioner went through. His appointment was confirmed on the eve of the election. He was not given the resources to run the election properly this time. So we should not blame everything on the Electoral Commission. We should equally blame all the other stakeholders, including the citizens of Papua New Guinea, for not doing our election right. So we have to have proper planning in election. Proper planning will mean everyone taking that as our business to correct the wrong. Our third recommendation is on the integrity of the polling officials. According to the Electoral Commissioner presentation, we have 22 election ministers and 22 assistant election ministers who are permanent employees of Electoral Commission, but others are casual. Now, the creation of casual employees, especially when you create a casual position for a returning officer who makes decisions, which is dangerous. So we should avoid that. We must have people who have integrity to run elections. We do not want rascals to run election on the day of election and run away. People who will not be accountable for election results. Now the election petitions, you will not see the names of returning officers, but you will see the names of the candidates who happen to win the system. And you will see the second defendant is Electoral Commission. These are unfair. We should have blamed. The first defendant should be the returning officer who make that declaration under any circumstance. Increased presence of security personnel, I think going back to planning. Since 1997 report or 1997 in the organic law on national, local and national level government council, they talk about introducing and trialing electronic voting. And I think 1997 to now, it's 15 years overdue for us to trial one, introduce and trial. I think it will require collaborative effort from everyone to try this system, because this is the only way I think we'll have some form of transparency and accountability. If we do it properly using ID system, biometric system, if we run elections away from the ballot papers, I think the ballot papers is creating problem. If we run away from the ballot paper using another modernized ICT technology, I think, or product, it will give some credibility and return some credibility to the process, and people will start to trust the system. And that will require the inter-agencies collaboration, including PNG, EC, DPLG, who works very closely with the sub-national government system. So DPLG will have to come into that and play very role. At the moment now, DPLG, PNC, EC, and NSO seem to work in isolation. Even the most expensive NID system, the civil registry system, it's not delivering the result, but it's working as a department of its own. So we have to come up with a system to work together, to get what is right, not to work in isolation and continue to make errors after errors after errors. I agree with the localization of our sixth recommendation is localization of the counting, because we realized that moving ballot boxes from the polling place to the central center to count is a waste of time. It's a waste of resources transporting them. So we just have to give this responsibility back to the candidates and the leaders in the community to vote and count, and just submit the result back to the central tally center. So doing that, I think it will save time. It will save time. It will save some resource. And I think, most importantly, people will try to correct some of these things. Because I can tell you, now we're having a lot of problems in the national election. But if you go to LLC election do not seem to have problem. Because people take ownership of the process in the village. And they know who is voting and who is not voting. They only allow the live people to vote. And maybe after that, I think they distribute or they share the extra ballot papers, whatever, but they create a accountability system in the village, because in the village, they know who belongs to this ward and who doesn't belong there. So if you're a visitor, definitely will not vote. So we have to take this down, localize the voting system, localize the counting system too. Ballot paper, gold and you come. It's not a copper, it's not a commodity. It's not a million kina we are transferring to town. We have to give it to the people to vote and count and give the result. If you want to screw it up, let them screw it up. And I think it's about time. Some of the things we have to say, the election is failed. I think we are scared to say election is failed. We have to owe up some things. We have to be honest. So this part of the election is failed, and we cannot honor the result. If people want to destroy the system, say the election is failed, for instance, Southern Highlands. If people do not want to follow the system the government created, just declare it as failed. What is wrong with saying the election in that area is failed? We have to take ownership of the system, the right system. Our number 7 recommendation will be to do a number of electoral reforms, and that is something that we'll recommend to the Parliamentary Special Committee to work on. One of them will be to review the qualification of candidates. The number of candidates is going up because 1,000 kina is lousy money. Anyone can bet. We have to increase the qualification. We have to increase the amount of nominations fees so that we have less people giving less problems. Now we are allowing everybody to nominate, and they create a lot of problems for the system that we should trust. And these people create a system that is not becoming trustworthy. Our second recommendation in line with the electoral reforms is to review and implement voters' identification system, which is alluded to in the Part 8A, 7A to C on the organic law on national and local level government elections. We have to review this. What kind of identification system we are going to use? The other, sorry, I was looking at my phone, I didn't see what's on the screen. The other recommendations, key recommendations in regards to the electoral reform, we wanted to see the number of electoral commission to increase. At the moment now, our electoral commissioner is feeling the responsibility, feeling the pinch of making the decision, especially when it comes to make a decision, critical decision like on special circumstance, which is alluded to Section 8A for letter D, on special circumstance. Because we have one electoral commissioner, now that decision, he feels responsible. But we need to increase that electoral commissioner. Like the Ombudsman Commission, we have to have 5, 4, 3 electoral commissioners to make a decision. And the other one, importantly, we need to seek interpretation and application of the special circumstance provided on the OLNT. There is no clear interpretation of when it should happen, what should happen. So we need a further interpretation and application. Okay, finally, I must conclude. Some of these amendments to organic law on local and national government elections are necessary to accommodate all the many problems that we've seen and going forward. PNCEC needs to seriously identify some of the electorates, maybe in the by-election or in the LLG election, to trial some of the new processes. And I think the current work or the current Parliamentary Special Committee on Elections, which NRI is engaged to do most of the review work, and we are trying to see through it. I think we will identify some of the problems and make some special recommendations to fix our election system going forward from 2017 onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goro. As you can see, there's a lot of things that we do want to present and discuss, but we also want to give an opportunity for questions and comments from the floor.